Okay, we are now recording, and I'll open the meeting. It's a special meeting because it's not our regularly scheduled meeting of the Windsor Southeast Supervisory Union Board. First off, we're going to have the school opening update. However, we have a guest who is here to speak on assisting us with implementing, approving, etc., the anti-racism policy. So if it is okay with everyone, if we were to jump to that policy, so he doesn't have to sit and wade through everything else with us. That good?
Sounds like a good plan.
Okay. So Elizabeth, you were going to introduce.
So I was going to introduce him because I am the person who invited him. This is Jameson Davis, and he is a law student at Vermont Law School. And he is one of the authors of the Hartford policy. So I sent him the questions that I had about the policy at our last meeting, and I just sent him the policy that we are looking at as we are looking at it today, so that he would have it. I apologize for not sending it to you further in advance of the meeting, but that is.
Thank you.
Can you tell us about yourself?
Yeah. First and foremost, thank you for inviting me to the meeting. You didn't have to move it up for me. As a former select board member, I'm used to sitting in very long meetings. So yes, I am a former select board member for the town of Hartford, 3L for Vermont Law School. I'm currently doing an internship with the Department of Justice in Washington, D.C., although I am in Quechee right now, working remotely. And so, yes, a peer of mine, Ariel King, founded Righting Wrongs LLC, which is pretty much what the platform we've been using to really help schools, organizations, municipalities, anybody who's willing and ready to develop an anti-racism policy. We've been working with quite a few schools and districts throughout Vermont and New Hampshire, New Orleans, New York City, having conversations kind of all over the regional area. So, you know, we're definitely excited to assist you guys. Ariel couldn't be here today. She's doing a presentation on embedded racism, which is a reoccurring kind of conference / webinar that Vermont Law School is doing. So today she was the guest speaker up there. So she sends her regards not being here today. So I will represent the both of us and hopefully help you guys, you know, answer any questions you may have and have a good conversation and just figure out what's best for you and Windsor Southeast.
Okay, Elizabeth, you said that you sent him questions. Do you have those, Jameson?
Yeah, so I have 2 questions, and we can start with those. Absolutely. So let me just pull them up really quick. The first question that I received from Ms. Burrows. Okay.
But the first question had to do with providing a definition of racism and anti-racism for the purpose of the policy.
Correct. So, I mean, with that, again, the policies that we create are specifically designed for each individual entity that we're working with. So we're not going to have the same policy throughout. So if the town of, or if Windsor Southeast feels and decides as if though racism needs to be defined within their policy, that's absolutely okay. We can help assist there. One thing that I want to say and point out about the racism definition is that it's important that it's a correct definition. It's important that it's a definition that has certain touch points built within it, right? And so what I mean by that is if you're going to define racism, you need to be specific about what racism is. So you need to articulate that, and it needs to be somewhere in a definition that mentions BIPOC individuals being targeted specifically. Because the conversation around reverse racism that I've been hearing sometimes and throughout my tenure in as a site board member, it is not a concept that I would consider to be added into a definition of racism. Racism is something that was created specifically in targeting people of color, Black people, and other individuals who fall within a BIPOC community. And so if we're going to define racism, it's important that we define it correctly and we are honest with what it is that racism is and what we are seeing here, specifically in the state of Vermont. So to answer your question, absolutely, we can put that in there. We can help you draft it. It's just important that when we put it in there, we end up with a definition that is correct overall.
Well, I had written a whole paragraph about the question, and then I decided to just give you the question. But I was thinking that in coming to a definition of racism and anti-racism, we are educating ourselves in the community in the process. So that was.
Yeah, again, the policy, again, is specific to your community and your culture. So if you feel you know your community and culture better than I ever could, right? Because you've been there. If it's a town of Hartford, I may argue to differ, but it's not. So you know whether or not that word needs to be defined. And so if you feel like you need that extra layer, that extra step, then 100% absolutely, let's take that. Because the one thing we don't want to do is that we don't want to create a policy that's not going to do any good in the sense of educating, as you say, or being able to hold individuals accountable when it needs to be used, right? Because that's the other piece of the policy. And the kind of indirect piece of the policy as well is the conversation that it sparks within the community, right? Just having the policy, and just matter of fact, not even having the policy, just having this conversation right now, it's a catalyst to a conversation that may or may not be happening in the community, right? People are interested in what you're doing as a board. That's why you record these, because somebody's gonna go back and watch them, and they're gonna, write things down. They're gonna take notes. They're gonna call you and send you emails and ask you questions that they have based on things that were said today. That is a conversation that needs to happen throughout the community, regardless if there's an anti-racism policy or not. And so there's many things that this policy does. It's not just a policy for, putting on the shelf and taking off the shelf when it's needed for discipline. It's not a policy just to hold people accountable. It's not a policy just to kind of, have it on your books to say you have it on your books. You need all those things to work collectively for it to be a policy that's actually going to do the things that we hope it does, and that your town, I would say, hope it does, in the sense of, again, having that conversation and just it being there when it's needed to be used. So if you, again, and it's just not racism, if there's other definitions out there that you feel like need to be laid out, then we need to lay them out. Because again, the education spectrum on racism is all across the board, and we don't want to assume that people know things when they don't know things. And we also don't want to put people in a position where they are afraid to ask questions or speak up due to the fact of what somebody's response is going to be. We start all of our meetings letting everybody know that any conversation we have with individuals, it's a cone of silence that we have, and it's a cone of confidence where you can ask any and every question. We won't be offended being people of color, because again, we are here in this space to educate and to help in ways that we can. And so there is no question that is not a good question if it's a question that you have sincerely. And I believe the second question you sent me, I was trying to find that one, is should it include means by which to measure the progress? So yes, we try to, when we developed, and again, this is going to be different for every entity that we work with, because everybody's policy and procedures are different, right? So in the Hartford policy, I'm sure you saw, and there's a policy section and there's a procedure section. The policy section is more so having the conversation in terms of this document is here to do this. Get rid of racism by putting up the sign on all of the schools buildings, whether that be the schools, athletic building, the shed building, where equipment is, wherever it may be in a high traffic area. And there's other things that fall within line of that. Then you have the procedure document, which is a separate document outside of the policy document. The procedure document is where you're going to see the most change most of the time, because that's going to be dependent on the process and procedures within that district, town, organization, municipality, etc. So there may be things that we need to add into yours, process and procedure wise, that we might not have to add into the town of Hartford or the town of Sharon or any other of the other towns. And so, we can have that conversation in terms of what needs to be added or taken out. So that's where we're really lean on you guys to really let us know if, there needs to be more things in which you want to make sure progress is done. What we try to do with the town of Hartford is that, speaking with the superintendent, Mr. DeBalsi, he was right in the room when we developed ours, when we made the final changes, I should say, because we developed before we got there. It went to a reading, then we went through another edit, and went to a second reading. And we looked right at him directly and asked him certain things. Are you capable of doing this? Is something you can do? And one of them was the reports, that there's a biannual report. When I mean biannual, I mean every other year. And one thing that we didn't realize ourselves that he helped us develop was, in some of these school districts, the demographics when it comes to people of color are so low that even when you try to disguise some of the material and some of the information that you're receiving, it still points out the people within that demographic, right? Because the demographics only was so big. And so therefore, bless you, Miss Katie, we tried to, work with the superintendent and work with the school board to figure out how can we still have that information put out there for not only the school, but for teachers and for students and for parents to gain access to it without anybody feeling vulnerable because they may or may not be within that document. And so if there's other ways in which, you think it's best for your district, then we would gladly, hash that out and figure out what is best. But again, it's not going to be the same for everybody. So things that you see in the Hartford version may or may not make sense for Windsor Southeast. So if you have any suggestions among, what it is that you want to see the measure, then yeah, we can definitely most definitely incorporate that. At the baseline level, we try to just do a biannual report that has certain information in terms of, incidents, how the incident was handled, how the disciplinary was handled, whether restorative justice was used as a discipline, things of that nature. Were there any? That was the only two questions that I had. So if there's any other questions out there, please feel free to ask me and throw them out.
I have a question. It's Amy. So we are in the beginning stages of reading through the policy and adapting it to our supervisory union, which consists of 3 separate districts.
Okay. Yep.
All of our policies are at the supervisory union right now, and then the boards, the individual boards also adopt them.
Okay.
But what I'm wondering, as you were describing the process of making this policy ours, to fit our community, would it make sense to you to have a couple of community members, perhaps, and one person from each of the towns that are represented by the school district to get together and kind of work through adapting this policy and working with administration to develop procedures?
So yeah, I'm always about diversity of minds, right? Especially in a situation with you guys where you have so many communities coming together as one, And we're, even in the town of Hartford, the 5 villages that make up Hartford, each town kind of has its own identity, right?
Right.
Or each village, I should say, has its own identity. And I can only imagine what it's like in your situation where you have, more than 5 villages being represented. So yes and no. The yes meaning I definitely want to have individuals, community members. If there's anybody within your towns or your villages that have been doing this work previously, we need them in the conversation. Okay, because one thing we don't do is that we're not trying to step on anybody's toes who's been doing this work prior to us. There are some communities that we've been in where people have already been doing great work, but just needed our assistance or wanted our assistance in some way. And so we made sure to incorporate them in the entire process, so they can take what they've learned and help us, and we can take what we know and help each other pretty much. On the no side, the only thing that I would be concerned with is I would not want a complete different document for each individual, and so we want to keep it as close knit as possible, especially because you are all coming together as one Windsor Southeast district.
Exactly, and it would be.
Okay.
Yeah. It would be. It wouldn't be 3 separate documents for each town. It would be per district, I should say.
Okay. It would make sense to have a representative be involved in each conversation, though, just so we can make sure that whoever wants to be appointed, whoever wants to appoint somebody, we definitely want to make sure that each district is represented. So when we do kind of roll it out finally, that everybody felt that they had the input, and then we can kind of build from there to make sure that we cover all our bases. Because there very well may be some instances in one district that may not be as prevalent in another. There may not be. It may just come across, well, they're very similar. But we want to make sure that's the case before we just assume.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Wow, very cool. Thank you.
Of course. Keep them coming. I'm here for you guys, so let me know.
Do other people have questions?
I do.
Nancy.
I wondered if the principals should be involved, because they would be the ones who would know about the incidents in their schools.
Again, it wouldn't hurt. It wouldn't hurt to have the principals involved. We've worked with principals before. I mean, we're working with principals now. So there's no harm in getting the principals involved. In some instances, it does help because they could let us know. Like, for instance, as we said about the document that we required to have, but we didn't catch on ourselves that the demographics are so low that it could possibly point some people out. The superintendent was the one that pointed out that to us. So the principal and superintendent, if they want to be involved, then there's no harm in that. But you just want to make sure that we're all working towards a document that can be completed, and a document that could be put out there for everybody to have a say on. And then when we come back to the drawing board after we have that chance, then we can make whatever adjustments are needed between the first read and the second read, or whatever the process is specific to Windsor Southeast.
Other questions? Sean just shared that the Anti-Defamation League has a definition of racism.
Vicki has her hand up, Amy.
Yeah. Oh, okay. You were in the corner. I didn't see you. Sorry.
That's okay. I just want to thank Jameson for coming, because the first time that when we read this policy last time, we didn't really understand where it came from. And so having you come and tell us where it came from is really fantastic. And I also just really appreciate what you said about involving the people in the schools that have been working on this already, because I honestly look at this and I'm like, well, yeah, I could write something, but I could approve this, but I really don't feel like I have the grasp and the handle, and I would really appreciate the background of everybody else. And so I guess, Amy, I'm proposing that we do try to form some kind of committee and figure out how to make it go farther.
Yeah, just so, I mean, I didn't really give much background on how we got here, but just to give a little bit so those who may or may not will know or feel more comfortable. So Ariel and I applied to be part of the Schweitzer Fellowship Program. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with that, but the Schweitzer Fellowship Program is a program that takes graduate students, engineers, lawyers, as well as those in the medical field, and they provide a way in which they could insert themselves into the communities and really work on, advocating and creating programs to help with really the health of that community and the health of, whatever their project is. So what Ariel and I decided is that we always wanted to try to find a way to, well, let me back up. The state of Vermont enacted H3 Act 1, right, which is the Ethnic Studies Bill. And so now is law in Vermont that you have to teach a certain amount of ethnic studies within schools. And so what we thought we would do is create a teacher's guide to assist teachers with having that conversation, right? Because me, as I grew up in Connecticut, went to all-white elementary school up until middle school. So I know what it's like to sit in an all-white classroom during Black History Month, and my teacher looked at me and asked me to teach the class about Kwanzaa, when I have no idea what Kwanzaa is myself, right? Or if, a teacher, shows the same kind of video that we show every year, which is like the hosing and the dolls stick on Black people and the beating, and then the lights get cut on and everybody's staring at you, right? So these are instances that happen very frequently. There's a lot of burdens that are placed on children of color when it comes to them being the only ones in the classroom. And so my mom was a teacher. She's been a teacher. I was an individual that would go to the grocery store with my mom, and she would have 2 or 3 carts that I helped push. And then we get to the checkout lane, and I realized none of it was for me. It was all for the students. And so, education has been near and dear to my heart and Ariel's as well. So we wanted to make sure that with the Ethnic Studies Bill, we tried to find a way to assist teachers who are really, really adamant about having this important conversations without them necessarily having to, because we know how much work you're doing, especially now with COVID, and especially now with so much stuff being on Zoom and on the video. We wanted to create something that you can just kind of pull from the shelf, and whether you're teaching science, English, history, whatever you're teaching, you can go to that page and you can teach about somebody of color who was prominent in that field, right? Because we all know what I call the classic 5, right? Martin Luther King, George Washington Carver, Malcolm X, Harriet Tubman, those are classic 5 or 6 that we all know, like the back of our hand. But there's thousands out there, literal thousands out there. And so what we wanted to do with this guide is that we wanted to be able to enlighten and expose the others who had just as much prominence in their respective fields, whether it was science, whether it was English, whether it was art, whatever the case may be. And we wanted to make it easier for teachers to do that, rather than, making it harder in the sense of having to do research and education on your own and trying to do all these things with a little bit of time that you have outside of creating your own work plans and things of that nature. So while we were doing that, we're doing that with the town of Hartford. They signed on to be our home-based school. And so while we were doing that, the social uprising happened. And so we were further ahead in our development on that program, that we felt comfortable putting that on pause just for a month or 2. And the true story is that I couldn't sleep one night, and so much was happening in the world. I just couldn't rest my eyes. I couldn't rest my body. And I was thinking about the kids in the schools who were probably having the same instance. The difference is that I'm 33 years old, and they're between the ages of, 14 to 18, right? And so what would that be like going back to school and in the amongst of everything that's happening? And so we felt like the one thing we could do is we can create a policy that regardless of who you are, that when you go back to school, you feel a little bit safer knowing that there's something there that you can lean on, or your school has something in place if an incident were to happen, right? Because there's too many times where we find ourselves being reactive and not proactive. you know? And so we wait for an incident to happen. We wait for a mom to pull her kid out of school. We wait for, you know, again, in my all white school, they try to put me on Ritalin when I didn't need it. I got sent home with this teacher one time, and my mom never cusses. This is the first time I heard her cuss. What is this, Jameson? And I said, Ma, I don't know. What I didn't tell her was that week, it was Black History Month. I know what happens every year, Black History Month. And so I didn't want to involve myself with white people, to be honest. And so I sat underneath my table, my desk. I did all my work, handed it all in. My grades were perfect as if they were any other week of the day or any other week of the month. The difference is I just knew what was coming up. I knew when we got time to do what we call current history or current events. When we did current events, I knew it was going to happen. We were all going to gather in our common area. They're going to roll the video out. I'm old, so they were rolling the videos out. They're going to roll the TV out. They're going to put the DVD on. Everybody's going to watch it. They're going to cut the lights on. They're going to look at me. And then somebody's going to ask me a question, and I was going to have to be put in a spot to answer a question I didn't know the answer to. And so, you know, that miscommunication, that misunderstanding is something that we want to write not only a guide, but a policy that just assisted people. You know, we're not teachers. We're not trying to tell anybody how to do their job or anything of that nature. We just want to assist because we experienced it. I personally experienced it. I personally know what it feels like to be that kid in class when that happens. I personally know what it feels like to be called a nigger in kindergarten. I personally know what it feels like to have the talk that my dad had to give me, which is if somebody does call you an N-word, then you need to, you know, keep your composure, but also at the same time, don't let them, you know, talk to you in that way. And that's a fine line. You know, like, how do you do that? What do you mean by that? You know, I'm a kindergartner. I didn't think I would have to get that talk, but not only did I think I would have to get that talk, I didn't think I would actually be called that. And it only took the first 3 days of school for it to happen. You know, and so having that experience, I feel like I'm a very privileged adult now as a Black male, being able to be in law school, being able to live in Vermont, being able to expose myself to so many things that my own family, my own cousins that I see and know every day and talk to every day would never have a chance to do it. And so therefore, you know, it would be a waste of the things that I went through not to apply that in a setting where, you know, it could help other students and kids and teachers and individuals. So that's kind of how we got to this point, and how we are where we are and why we will continue to do this work until it's not needed anymore. So any other questions? I would love to answer them. All right.
Well,
Hi. Sorry.
okay, Anne.
I guess just one thing is as far as like dealing with racial issues, it's difficult here in Vermont because there are so few people of color around that it almost feels like you have to single them out and you know, beg them to help out with policies like this. I just don't know like how you feel about, you know, having a bunch of, you know, like white people like us making this policy.
Well, you know, that was, I'm pretty sure it's concerning, point blank period. It's concerning, which is why we've tried to infiltrate ourselves to help assist you in any way possible. Because there are certain things that you might miss that you might not think about solely because you never had to think about it before a day in your life. You know, some of you may have mistakenly have said or done things similar to asking a person of color to educate us, like my teacher did Kwanzaa. She didn't mean anything harm by it. She didn't mean anything, you know, bad by it. But that doesn't mean it's not a microaggression. You know, that doesn't mean that, you know, that it didn't have effect on me and things of that nature. We applaud the fact that you're having this conversation, and we applaud the fact that you're doing this work. That hands down cannot be said enough. But when you're doing this, when you're doing specific work, especially around racism and anti-racism, you definitely need to have diversity within that conversation, because there are no doubt going to be instances that you're just not going to think about. You're just not even going to know that you should have thought about that, because again, none of you have ever been the only Black kid in class, you know? And just being the only Black kid in class doesn't qualify me to be sitting in front of you and having this conversation. You know, there's so much more that goes behind it. in terms of educating myself, in terms of helping educate others. You know, I've represented a town of 10,000 people that has a demographic of around 94% Caucasian. You know, I've gotten emails telling me to go back to Africa as their select board member, things of that nature. So, you know, it's just, if you want a policy that is going to do the things that you want it to do, you need to be able to have the conversations that you may not want to have now. So that way, when you finish the policy, you feel more comfortable having that conversation with somebody else who may be uncomfortable having that conversation. Because the reality is that when this policy gets done, it's going to be up to the individuals on this call and those that you work with to keep that policy at the forefront of everybody's mind. This isn't a policy that we're creating just to put on a shelf and then let it collect dust, right? This is something that you're going to have to work towards every day, literally from this day forward. Anti-racism is not a one training thing. It's not a one Zoom call thing. You know, it's a mental, it's a lifestyle change, just like you would do anything else. You know, it's not that everybody is racist or anything of that nature, but you have to continue to teach yourself to be anti-racist. You know, you have to be comfortable having conversation with friends who may make jokes that are uncomfortable. Family members that may say things uncomfortable. You know, you have to be able to be comfortable enough in yourself to have that conversation in a way that could reach them better than anybody else could, because they know you personally, right? And so that's what it boils down to, is just the fact of, if you want the policy to be what the policy could be, and to help the policy change certain cultures, then you're going to have to cover as much ground and much bases as you can. And you're absolutely right about signaling out the individuals within your community, which is why I mean Ariel here, you know, because it very well may be uncomfortable. So for the one or two or the few Black people within your community to all of a sudden get a call from somebody they never spoke to before and say, hey, we're creating an anti-racism policy. You're Black or you're a person of color. Do you want to help us write it? You know, that's a microaggression. That's what it is. And so, yes, we are offering ourselves to be that for you.
Angie, you had a question.
Hi, Jameson. I'm Angie Ledoux. I'm the Director of Curriculum. So I'm thinking about beyond the policy and how we, you know, you were talking about the microaggression by asking, the few person of color, to be on the committee. How do we encourage our children of color to be part of this conversation and those families? I mean, I'm thinking that's very important. Mm-hmm. I'm also thinking that how do we do that in a way that isn't seen as a microaggression or experienced in a way that, oh, I'm singled out because,
mm-hmm.
It's
about creating safe spaces. It's about them deciding they want to be a part of it, right? And they will only decide they want to be a part of it if they feel like they're safe in that space. So, you going to them and asking them, hey, do you want to be a part of this policy writing or be a part of this club or be a part of this, whatever it may be. And then they get there and they realize that space isn't ready for their presence, right? And so that's what you have to really kind of take into everything that we do on the anti-racism side, especially when you're asking, because right now here's what's happening, right? And this is happening all across the world. I have never personally been asked to be on more board of director positions in my life than in the last 3 or 4 months. And I couldn't have paid anybody to let me be in that. You know what I'm saying? You get what I'm saying now? So it's like, oh, so now, but at that point as well, what you don't want to do is that you don't want that person to feel as if the only thing they're bringing to the table is their Blackness or is their however they identify. Okay, because that's also another thing you want to watch out for, is that, hey, we're not inviting you just because you're the only Black person in school or you're the only Black person that I know. We're inviting you because you have knowledge that can help us get to where we want our culture and our community to get to. And so in order to get to that point, for me, it's just about creating that safe space first, right? I was on a call with somebody. I was doing a talk with the Audubon Society, and somebody asked a question similar to yours. And the they asked, you know, as they were running a program for youth in like the nature, and they wanted more people of color to be in the program, rightfully so. And she asked me a question. I asked her a question right back. I said, "Is your program ready for that person of color?" And that's what you have to ask yourself: is our program, is our curriculum, is our, you know, whatever it is that we're creating, ready for the person of color that we want it to enter? And you will only know that answer when people of color start inserting themselves, right? Because when we start inserting ourselves, we only insert ourselves in places where we feel comfortable and where we feel safe. And so that's kind of really, you know, what the mindset should be around developing these things is if we get a person of color today, will they go home want to come back? Because even in Vermont as a whole, right? The thing about Vermont as a whole is we get people to come here. It's how do we get them to stay here? Right? I can get a teacher to teach for a year, but how do I get them to teach for 5? How do I get to teach for 10? You know? And so that's it. That's the question you have to ask yourself when you're doing this type of work is, you know, what do we do to keep people? What do we do to keep them feeling like this is their community? And we don't want them involved just because of their blackness or because of their person of color, but because of what they bring to the table as everything. I do have to say, you know, I should probably do a disclaimer, but I'm like a little bit on the blunt side of things. So my apologies if this is like right in your face. But you know, we can have an off camera conversation if needed. No other questions?
Good.
Okay.
Are there any other questions or comments?
So this is Dave Baker, the superintendent. I just didn't know what, we're going to talk about next steps before Jameson leaves. I mean, we have that draft policy, but it's really just kind of what's next.
Right. What I was hoping, we've been moving along, but ever so slowly. Anne Marie brought to everyone's attention in the chat that we had been talking about having a subcommittee form, a racial task force. But I don't think any action had really been done with that. And what I am wondering is if we could have some volunteers, people who have the time and energy to be part of that, preferably someone from each of our communities, so that everyone is represented. And then we can, once the board group gets together, then we can reach out to the community to see if others in the community, keep it relatively small, with, and then report back after a couple of meetings.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to things on our side, you know, whenever you guys have that committee together and you decide that, you know, you for sure want us to continue to work with you, then, you know, we'll be ready to go, and we'll have everything on our end. We have, you know, already procedures that we do and have done. So we'll just continue to use those.
Yeah. Jameson, I had a question. It sounds like if we get a few board volunteers, and I know there are a couple of administrators, if not more than that, that would love to be a part of this. I mean, and then we start to promote this in the community. I mean, do you have a suggestion? I mean, in terms of how you would name the task force so that it would feel safe and that it wouldn't feel like you're trying to do something, you know, like if you call it a racism task force or an anti-racism I mean, I don't know what would be a good name to make it feel safe to people of color in our community as well.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, me personally, I like anti-racism, and the only reason why that is because it's letting people know what it is we're combating, you know, we can't sugarcoat things when it comes to the terminology we're going to be using, right? So a quick preview. One of the questions that we ask when we get to that point is, how comfortable are you and your community using the terms white supremacy, white superiority, institutionalized racism, systemic racism? You know, we ask those questions about how comfortable you are because of the fact that those are the things that we're going to be combating with the policy, you know. But they also, as I know, again, from my experience, it's a cringe kind of worthy instance sometimes when you hear it, because just by having the word white in front of those things, it personalizes it for a lot of people, even though it may or may not necessarily should, right? And because it personalizes it, sometimes the cringe-worthy response is people are feeling attacked. When reality is that's not at all what we're doing. We're just addressing what it is that we are seeing, right? And so for me, anti-racism works on both because it lets the people of color know that this is where the community is going. And so if they want to be a part of it, they're more than welcome to be a part of it. They're not required to, but the door is open for them 100%. And that goes with anybody else who also wants to be a part of the conversation.
Yeah, no, that's helpful, Jameson. So I think anti-racism task force is not a. I think that, you know, you say what it is, and I think the other piece of this, and I say this to the board members, is I think that task force needs a charge, right? They need to know what they are supposed to be doing, you know. And it sounds like one of the charges will be to put together a comprehensive policy that'll represent, all the communities essentially. So that would be one charge. The second charge might be I don't know. I mean, I think you have to discuss this, but
yeah,
the second charge might also be to come up with a strategy to implement that policy, right? So that it doesn't just sit on the shelf, like Jameson said. I mean, I think if we had those two charges to begin, I think that would be great. And I am glad to hear, Jameson, you're willing through personal experience and also just through the organizations you've worked with to help us with this, because I think we need that perspective at the table, and I'm just glad you're open to that. So I don't know how the board feels, but we've never had an official motion to establish, an anti-racism task force that would be charged with the two things that I just said. You could word them any way you wanted to word them. I think that would be a good first step, and then we could. I would assume Elizabeth's got Jameson's contact information. We could reach out to the community and say we're looking for members. I know the community is waiting for this because I've gotten emails saying, I thought you were going to start an anti-racism task force. I haven't heard anything lately. And again, we got buried in COVID and all that other stuff. But I don't think this is going to be a surprise to our communities. I think I think you're going to get some good. I think you're going to get some good membership on that team. I've already got a couple of names. I don't have them with me tonight, but of people who have stepped forward who want to do that. So it's really up to the board.
There are two people named Colleen who have questions. Are you Colleen Spence and then Colleen Deschamps? Is that okay?
I guess I'll tag on to thank you for coming, Jameson. I'm really excited about getting started with this. My question was kind of, do you recommend drawing out we were talking about the strategy for implementing this policy, drawing out specifics in the policy that we plan to implement. I mean, I guess that's kind of where my head was going, was what next steps were, and then David kind of covered it, but that's what I was wondering.
Yeah, again, if you're not somebody who's going to be on the committee, but there are things that you think for sure need to be addressed, then I would just say have that list and give it to the person who's going to be representing your district in the committee. That's, again, if you're not on the committee itself. But yes, I mean, you're more than welcome to obviously go through the policy, critique that, cross things out you don't like, circle things you do like, add asterisks, whatever you want to do. But if you're on the committee, you just bring that to the committee when we meet with you. If not, then you just hand that over to somebody who could kind of be your mouthpiece for that part of the development. And then again, when we get to the first draft, again, that's the first draft, right? And so you guys will look it over, you'll give suggestions, you might vote on it, whatever the case may be. And then if there's a need for a second draft, then we'll make the necessary changes there as well. Did that answer your question?
Kind of. I guess what I'm picturing now is, kind of embracing your comments about this being an ongoing, everyday thing that we're working on. I'm leaping forward to what are these everyday things that we're going to be asking our teachers and our administration to do, and would we be drawing that kind of stuff out in a policy, or just arming them with the materials that they need to do these things that are maybe a little more generalized in our policy?
Exactly. Yeah. So the idea is that no, we would not just throw information out to teachers and expect them to do it on their own. The idea is that we would create things within the procedure document that would kind of identify and outline the specific things.
Okay.
So for example,
so separate procedure document
so there's
to go along with our policy. Okay.
Yeah, there's a policy document and then there's a procedure document. Like I said, the policy document is kind of the overview. This is the anti-racism policy. This is designed to combat racism, and it goes into different parts. The procedure policy really goes into specifics of how that's done.
Great.
Right. And so that talks about we require certain monies to be set aside for the school to use specifically for training. We require not only the staff to be trained on anti-racism policy, but administrators as well. There's a part in there where the district shall form a committee of high school students to promote equity and diversity, to serve as leaders and spokesperson within the school and district, because again, we need buy-in from everybody involved, right? And that just doesn't mean, that's from the bottom up, all the way from the students to the teachers, to the administrators, to the superintendent. So yes, we will have specifics built within.
That's helpful.
Yes.
Thank you. That's what I was wondering.
Okay. And then Ms. Colleen, second Colleen?
Another Colleen.
Hi, I'm Colleen DeChamp. I'm one of the administrators at Windsor School. Hi, Jameson. So glad you're here. I'm just thinking about what I heard Amy say about maybe starting small, and what Dr. Baker said about like the right name for the task force. And that makes me think about what you said, Jameson, about being safe. And are we ready for this? Is the person who joins this task force ready and feeling safe? Are we ready for everyone to be there? And anybody can feel unsafe, any person. So I don't feel, I'm just wondering if the name is that important, and if it would feel safer if we did more of a description of what we were trying to do. The task force that's trying to do this, and then when the task force feels comfortable, then they name it as a task force who feels comfortable with what the right name for it is. And the idea of starting small, I just would hate to turn people, like limit that if we had a lot of people who wanted to be there, because I'm sure we've got a lot of work to do, and it's an everyday piece, and it's a lifestyle change. There's lots of people to do. And I could imagine breaking us into smaller committees, but I would hate to limit by, I'm not sure what you meant, Amy, by starting small, but I wouldn't want to turn anyone away if they were feeling safe to start right off the bat.
Yes, things. The first thing is just, you're absolutely right when it comes to feeling safe, right? Again, that's where I spoke of in terms of, your community better. You know where you are in terms of, if we say racism, will that spark an uprise? If we say, X, Y, and Z, will that have a negative impact? But you also have to ask yourself, is that okay? Is it okay to kind of spark a little bit of outrage and a little bit of impact for this conversation, right? Because what you can't do, and what I would discourage you to do, is try to get everybody on board, right? just because that may or may not happen. But at the same time, you do want to make sure that you're not alienating anybody who wants to be on a board but may not feel safe on a board, or who wants to be on a board but doesn't want to actually speak their mind when they get on the board, right? Because that's another thing that we don't, we also welcome different viewpoints, right? And so if we need to have a conversation with different viewpoints, then if that's what your community is made up of, then that's what your community is made up of. And we need to have, as many voices as possible. But what I would say in terms of the kind of the smart starting small and not starting small part is that there are certain points within the development where it makes more sense to have more people involved, right? So from the very beginning, for to develop the policy, it may not make sense to have 40 people on a Zoom call. It may make sense to have 40 people on a Zoom call when the policy is written and it's actually on paper, and this is what we're going to vote on. But before you vote on it, let's run by it with as many people as possible. So if there's any tweaks that need to happen, that can be done before the vote. If there's conversations that need to be happening because you're representing your community, you can have those conversations with people individually, and if me and Ariel need to help out in any way within that, then obviously we'll be there as well. But, just from my experience, again, on a document as important as this, on a document that, touches a lot of baseline level, you want to try to get as much done up front in a tight-knit group, but then open it up when it's time to open it up. This isn't something we're going to sneak under the rug to anybody. This isn't something we're going to hide and all of a sudden it's voting day, this is on the ballot type thing. This is something that people need to know is coming, and then that we need to be able to have these conversations.
Sean?
I move that our supervisory union establish an anti-racism task force.
I'll second.
Is there further discussion? Hearing none, I will take all those in favor of our supervisory union forming an anti-racism task force, say aye. Or
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Excellent. Next up, just to start small so that we're not all I can't think. Anyway, to have at least one person from each of our towns. I will take volunteers for that. Elizabeth, you're volunteering?
I will volunteer for that from Wethersfield.
Elizabeth, Colleen, Spence from Heartland, Sean from Wethersfield, and do we have someone specifically from Windsor?
It's okay to have more than one from a place. I see Mr. Cole has her hands up. Mr.
Yeah.
Cole Buck.
I would be a second from Heartland.
Okay.
I was pointing at you, Nicole, that I'd beat you,
That's okay. I'm happy you did.
but I'm glad you're coming.
I'll volunteer for Windsor, Chris and I.
And I saw Mark had his hand up.
I would like to be involved with this as well. It sounds fascinating to me, and it's something I'm quite passionate about. So if there's room for another one, I'd like to be a part. Thank you.
Sure.
If there's not any other questions for me, believe it or not, I do have class at 8 p.m.
Ooh, that's too bad.
Don't ask me why, but I do.
Thank you, Jameson.
If you again, I will. If you don't have one, we're gonna head out and get ready for that.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
And thank you
Thank
so much. We'll be in touch.
please do.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
So the other question, Amy, is I mean, I'm certainly glad to take the lead. It's right up. It's right something I definitely have a passion for, but I don't want to usurp. I mean, if there's somebody else of the people who just volunteered that want to take the lead, we can be the conduit and get words out to the communities and get requests for membership out to communities and all that stuff. But I would not be hurt if somebody else wanted to take that on.
Yeah, what I'm thinking is for the first meeting is our favorite kind of doodle poll, and to have it happen fast, like in the next week and a half or so. I know we're all, at least a few of us, are kind of up to our little eyeballs in kind of crazy meetings, but if that could happen sooner. And so the group meets and decides about dates to involve the public, to have a community forum on who wants to be involved and kind of what we're doing, to have a discussion to let the public know. And then all of our meetings would be they would be public meetings, so anyone from the public could attend our virtual meeting.
So do we want to solicit public interest first and generate that list of people from our communities that are interested? Is that how we want to start?
No, I think to publish that we're establishing an anti-racism, or the board has established a board anti-racism task force, and we're welcoming community members, and our first meeting is on this date at this time.
So invite anybody who wants to be a part of it.
Right. And then because not everyone who wants to be, I mean, we all want to be, but it's levels of ability to be committed and to be able to go to meetings. So what I see is all of the meetings will be public sessions, but not everyone attending is going to be a member of the task force.
I gotcha.
So that people feel that they can attend the meetings, but not have to commit to every single meeting. That will just be the task force.
Mm-hmm.
And Mark, you had a question.
Yeah, more of a suggestion. I think that if there's any way that we can have the subcommittee meet first to establish an agenda, a general through line of what it is we're going to do before we involve public input, that'd be good, just so we get our feet underneath us, and it's not just one big Zoom call, because if we end up with 75 people interested and we don't have any structure at all to this subcommittee, I don't think we're going to get anywhere. So if we just start small, give ourselves a few parameters, at least lay the ground rules for the first open session of people that might be showing up, and or perhaps a point person who can accommodate the technology. I just feel like that would be a better start to it, instead of just a free-for-all from anybody who wants to pop in from the public.
Exactly. That's very, very good. Thank you, Mark, for bringing all of that up.
Bill has his hand up.
Bill.
I just want to echo what Mark said.
You want to put your mic down, Bill?
Quite hear you.
And your mic down.
Roger. Well, I was eating, so I didn't want to get any more maple syrup on my mic. I want to echo what Mark said. I think it's really important to have sort of the steps you're going to go through, an agenda first. I really liked what was talked about, going through the steps of defining what racism is, or however what sort of steps the committee wants. that would create structure so you move forward.
Exactly. It has to be, I think the task force, the board task force needs to meet first and determine who kind of the leader of that, who's going to be taking charge of the meetings and making sure that we're following the open meeting law, all of that kind of thing. And there absolutely has to be structure. Otherwise, it turns into just more tension, unhappiness, people feeling that they haven't been heard, and that it's just another, oh, well, they're doing this, but nothing's going to be done. I think we all want this to be to be action steps, as opposed to what Jameson was saying, a policy that just goes into a book and we never look at it again. So I think the first step, if people are willing to do it, is that we set up a meeting of just our group, and it can be, again, a public meeting, but we're not asking for public input at this point. We just want to get kind of set the parameters of what our task force will be doing. And then we can open it up for people who, from our communities, who want to be more involved in the task force.
Are you, Amy, are you thinking, or is the group thinking maybe you should have Jameson involved in that first structural meeting? Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think we should. So that might be the first thing, is to get the dates he's available.
Right. Yeah.
Is that what you were going to say, Elizabeth?
Yeah, I was going to say that maybe we should start with finding out when I think he and Ariel had planned to do a kind of tag team, so that we have twice as many dates as we think we do. So they're somewhat interchangeable. They work as a team, but we can find out when they're available and then doodle poll those dates.
Yeah.
That would be wonderful. Elizabeth, because,
I'll do it. I'd be glad to do it.
Your life.
Yeah.
Would you be willing to get some dates? And then you can let me know and I can do the doodle poll.
I don't mind doing the doodle poll. It's actually not that big of a deal to set up.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So that sounds good, Elizabeth. And then this may be a stupid question because we're halfway, if not 3/4 of the way through our meeting, but is anybody taking minutes tonight? I mean, I know we're recording it, which is good. Is anybody scratching down notes? Because I'm not. I saw some people writing. Like I see Elizabeth writing.
I am writing down, but I was just taking notes. I wasn't necessarily doing minutes. But
we don't theoretically have a minute taker at our meeting.
Sorry.
I'm taking notes as far as the motion.
Okay, we can all put our heads together. I mean, I think that's the other thing too. We've probably got to reach out to do an internal posting for somebody who might be willing to take our minutes. I mean, we haven't talked about that, but we probably should.
Right.
But we have the recording, so we can probably get minutes from the recording.
Yeah, and I will do that.
Okay, I'll start from here.
Oh, good. Colleen's taking notes now.
Oh no, I wasn't asking you to, Colleen. I was just asking, were you the person who made the second to the motion?
No, it was
that was Nikki.
Nikki.
Okay.
Yeah. And by the way, Lori, I think Lori, my new administrative assistant, I don't think she'd mind either, Amy. Just let me know. She wouldn't mind scratching.
Since you have it recorded.
From the recording, she might scratch some minutes out of the recording. I just think we've got to get our note takers. We need one for Heartland. We need one for Mount Escutney, and we need one for the SU. So, and I don't mind putting a little posting out to internally to the staff. There may be somebody out here who loves that kind of work.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
I'll do that.
Okay. So we jumped to the anti-racism policy, and we are taking some really good first steps. So how about we go back to the top of our agenda, if people would like, and talk about how school opening went.
Yeah, we certainly have a lot of administrators on this call, which is great. I love the fact that our principals are attending our SU meetings, and that's great. And I think they would all be one voice saying that it went better than we had expected or worried about all summer. We put a lot of time into planning, but I think that the best laid plans of mice and men work this time, and I think that we. It's just so heartwarming to see the kids so cooperative. Not that we haven't had a few bumps here and there and a few glitches, but in general, for both the in-person kids, the remote kids, and then as Sean reminded us last time, we have this other group of kids that are working with the AOE, developing their own curriculum. But I think so far so good. We did do a little dipstick survey of the staff last week. We took that Friday and did some debriefing, and we did get some data back from the staff. I don't know, do you want to put that up, Angie? It's only a couple of slides that we could look at if people want to take
Sure.
a minute and look at how the staff felt in general.
Just a second. I'm trying to make my mouse work.
And also if Christine or Colleen or Kate, or I don't know if Jean Marie's on the line. I don't see Jean.
She had IEP meetings.
Oh yeah, she had an IEP meeting. Yeah, but if anybody wanted to add anything, feel free.
It should only take me a few minutes to go through just an overview of the data.
Of those slides.
So we, on Friday last week, that was day 4 for in-person instruction, and our students were remote that day. We asked them a few questions. We asked them to organize themselves into teams and into the teams they usually work with. And we asked them some questions about the interdisciplinary units, about unified arts integration, how they were feeling about the safety protocols, about how they were feeling about the building cleanliness, and then to share with us anything else that's on your mind. So first of all, we got 29 responses. That's 29 teams. I'd say probably a handful of those were individuals. So that represented over 179 staff from all areas of instructional staff. We did not have the custodial staff and bus drivers and lunch staff did not respond to the survey. So about the interdisciplinary units, we asked them if they had started to work on their interdisciplinary unit, and not surprising, there was a lot of others, and some said yes and some said no. And the primary reason, then we asked them, okay, so tell us about that answer. And as to be expected, they're establishing routines, getting to know the kids. They're building their community. They're working on introducing Canvas and VTVLC in the event that should happen to go remote. And there were a lot of comments about how we're just taking this step by step, and we will be doing more each week as we move forward. The second set of questions we asked was how the Unified Arts schedule is working. And so there were a lot of different answers to this one, but I had given them 3 general categories: very well, and okay, after some tweaking, we should be getting this better, not great, and then unsure, there hasn't been enough time. So that was some of the answers that we got. So then I took that data and I put them in the categories. So we could see that, primarily they feel like it's going okay, that we have some tweaks to make, but they feel like they are going to be able to move forward with it. We've kind of slowed the progress of our interdisciplinary units in terms of moving forward in order to allow teams, teachers to work with students on getting to know the Canvas and VTVLC curriculum. So generally, the comments were that, things are going well. And the Unified Arts teachers miss having their own classroom and miss having their, being able to work with students on their content. That's to be expected. There was a lot of positivity about being able to have art every day or PE or whatever the specialist that was working with the team. And they, really appreciate the work that the teams seem to appreciate what our Unified Arts teachers bring to the children's experience and bring to their teams. The next set of questions were about safety. We really wanted to see if our staff were feeling safe, because as you know, the hours and hours of planning was about making sure that we are creating a safe environment so that our students feel safe, that our families feel reassured, and that our staff feel safe. So in their teams, we asked them to look, to answer this from a team base, because with 179 staff, to try to go through that data in a short period of time is very challenging. So the reason behind having the groups, the teams answer the question was so that we could we wouldn't have to spend as much time just trying to figure out what the data was that we were asking. So the blue areas, yes, most of them feel very safe with the precautions. The red areas, at least 2/3 of us feel safe, but some of us are still not sure. And then the orange areas, less than half of us feel truly safe with the precautions. There were no no's. So I would say we're doing a decent job of helping people feel safe. Some of the comments were like, to get kids to wear their masks and to walk and to maintain their distancing was like herding cats. And I can imagine that went for all grade levels, not just our littlest kids, but even our bigger kids. Masking and social distancing seems to be understood on a broad range. There is some trepidation about, will people continue to stay diligent? And there are several comments about feeling like it went a lot better than they expected it to. And they want to know more about that evening fogger. Apparently there is an evening fogger set off at the end of the day that helps disinfect the buildings. And I don't know, David, if you wanted to talk a little bit more about that. I don't know anything about it. So do you?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know much more other than I don't think it's like all of a sudden a bomb hits the school and it gets fogged all at once. I mean, I think what they're talking about is they have this equipment that they can go around each classroom and spray this disinfectant in the classrooms, and so I think that's really what it is. These canisters are, and so each building. I don't think it's every night, but I think it's like pretty frequently that they do that, and they're also blowing in 4 hours of that clean air every night, and they're blowing out 2 hours in the morning before the kid, or the other way around. I think they blow it in the afternoon or in the morning, and then in the afternoon they blow out for a couple of hours. So yeah, so they're keeping that HVAC system going pretty well too. But the buildings have looked nice and seem to really smell nice, but I don't know, that might be because we're not getting as much foot traffic in the corridors, and so the buildings seem in good shape still.
Great. The next section's on building cleanliness. So there were some suggestions for improving safety. Tents or something outside that could provide shading would help make outside learning a little more comfortable. And though we haven't had any rain, I imagine that, a place that they could get under with groups of kids if it was lightly raining might be helpful. Signage and line marking for movement of traffic were some ideas, staggering the release time for the 9th through 12th graders. Several comments on having better access to the disinfectant wipes, towels, paper towels, etc. And then I think the teachers and staff that work with younger students are concerned about the younger students being able to read their facial expressions if they have a mask on. And so there were some questions about, how could we explore options that could work? And I mean, we know we have plastic the face shields, but you still have to wear a mask with the face shield. You could take the face mask down momentarily, but I think they were thinking about, are there other solutions for that? So building cleanliness, what's your team's experience of your building's cleanliness? So blue is it exceeds all expectations, and 55% said it meets their expectations, 35% does not meet, and there was a small percentage that the building was below their expectations. So some of the comments on that were that there seems to be, I think this goes with trust. The staff are not seeing that the daily cleanings are necessarily being done. So we've told staff that there are 3 times a day that daily cleanings, like of restrooms and common areas, are being wiped down, and they don't know if that's happening, and it's probably because it's happening when they are doing other things. And I know that earlier this week we had one of our principals address this with her staff, and it's that very thing. It's happening when they're outside, or at the end of the day when they're getting the kids out to the buses and they're preparing to go home. And so they're not seeing it being done doesn't necessarily mean it's not being done. There was some questions about, can we teach kids to clean their own desks in their own areas? There were some concerns about making sure the trash and recycling and compost buckets were emptied on a daily basis. I think part of this too is just getting into the routine. So we should make sure that Jim gets the feedback so that he can share this with his staff. And then overall, there was a general sentiment that staff are doing a great job keeping the building clean. So then we asked, what else is on your mind? And there was an overwhelming sense of, we are so happy to be back here with our coworkers, with our students, just so happy to be together again. Not gonna sugarcoat it, Canvas and VTVLC have been very stressful. There's been a lot of, I say a lot, but there's been negative feedback from our families and our students who are frustrated. And I think that we just need to give ourselves time to get used to that, get everybody logged in. VTVLC themselves are, the organization has been, as responsive as they can possibly be. They're trying to set up, what we heard was, at the time that we were sending our information to VTVLC, we were one of 2 school systems that actually had all our stuff to them at that time. And this was the week before our school started. So in these last few weeks, they've been setting up a lot of other schools. And I don't know how many schools in the state of Vermont are using either VTVLC to go or using their program. The option we talked about with where we loan them teachers. So anyways, there's a lot of setup going on, and I'm hoping that we get all those kinks worked out. And it does seem, I'm working with a remote only team, and it seems like every day is slightly better. We still don't have everybody 100% connected and up and running. And part of the nature of coming back to school is that we do have some students that register late. And that might be made worse this year because of the length of time it's been since kids were in the buildings. But we still have kids that are registering, and then we have to make sure that they have their Chromebooks and then get them into the system. So we just are asking for a lot of patience and understanding. I think there's a lot of appreciation and gratitude for the work that's been done, which feels really good. And I know that as an administrator, I really applaud the efforts of our staff as they have come back here to make lemonade out of lemons, because it's not been easy. Working together is our best form of defense. Are there any questions?
I had a comment for the, I guess, the lack of trust with the custodians actually doing the cleanings. Where I work, we have a sheet up in our cafeteria, and whenever someone cleans it, they put initials, cleaned at this time, certain days and times. So maybe just a sheet like that outside the bathrooms or something might make people feel like better.
Yeah, yeah.
Just a suggestion.
Yeah, that could work in the bathrooms, I bet. Yeah, good suggestion. I think Angie's right. I think it's the time when they're doing it. I mean, I've been in every building and I see the custodians, they've always got a bottle and a rag in their hands and they're wiping everything all the time. So I just think sometimes when you're in your classroom, you don't see it. But I think that was the initial data. I think though with the VTVLC, the stress of that, one of the things that we talked about as administrative team today is I think we may need one more week next week. I'm gonna get the word out to parents where, the afternoons are around preparation planning, getting ready for, just continuing to get, good facility of that VTVLC and Canvas platform. We don't want to push and press as much. I did see the teachers though, as I walked around, they are teaching the kids how to use it because that's going to be the platform if we go completely remote. And, so far so good, but you never know as flu season hits and winter hits, what'll happen. But I think it's a good platform. And Bill kind of jokingly today, Bill Yates said that Hartford picked another platform and they're really struggling with that as well. Right, Bill? I forget what you said, but you said that they're having a tough time with that new platform as well with their remote kids.
Yeah, David, let's not get into that.
No, we won't. We won't. We won't. I think it's all new for everybody, and we just need time.
It is. It's a struggle trying to get things going
I don't know
at
if anybody
short notice.
Was that Nikki?
I don't know if anybody listened to the governor's press conference earlier this week, but Canvas and VTVLC came up in the governor's press conference. Just the insanity of how many new students they've had to enroll into the system. And the governor admitted that they were struggling, but they were working very hard to come through. So I guess it just, what you're feeling is real and it's statewide. And I think it's coming along, but it's definitely noticed at the high levels.
Someone said he also said that we're going to stay in phase 2 at least until October. I mean, so I think that's not surprising because remember, only the governor by executive order can move us from one phase to another phase. So I think the plan we've got is working. I wouldn't move away from it too quickly. I think we've just got to get settled and build those patterns. And staff have been great in terms of their cooperation and their investment, and so have the families and the kids. When you see, I've seen a couple of drop-offs in the morning, Windsor and Wethersfield. It's just amazing how those parents are synchronized. They get their kids there between 8 and 8:30. That takes a lot of community support and cooperation, and the parents have been great.
I have a question for busing, because one of the concerns was how kids were going to be screened before they got on buses, and just wondering how that has worked, if there have been many family kid bus driver complaints.
Do one of the principals want to speak to that, or I haven't heard any complaints, but does it seem like everything's working okay on those buses in terms of the health checks?
Yeah, our what we learned this week is not to leave the thermometers on the buses because the cold weather kills the batteries. So placed the batteries in our thermometers already, and we are struggling a bit. I did talk to Jim that some of the thermometers seem to be not reading. Yeah, they're reading low.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's the weather or if it's the thermometer itself. So he's on it. So, but really no complaints. Everybody's been really, really helpful.
Yeah. We didn't go with the cheap thermometers, but we didn't go with the more expensive thermometers. We got something kind of, and they're not hospital grade or, so Jim's working on that because I think it is an issue. When your forehead or wrist gets cold, it comes back cold. We've had a lot of low grade fevers as kids come in the building, so we're working on that.
I've touched base with our bus screeners every morning, and each day it gets better, and they're knowing the kids and the families, and they're seeming to do really well. I think at the very beginning, it might have been a couple minutes of the timing of the bus and the bus stops that we were looking at, but the screening, I think, is going better each day, and relationships are being built and people are familiar with the persons taking the temperatures.
Yeah. It's good to build those relationships with those kids too, right? What better way to get to know a kid than take his temperature or her temperature, right? That's a good deal.
I've heard many staff members say how much they enjoy the health checks, actually, because they get to check in with the parents, say hello quickly, and smile at the kids. So that's a positive coming out of the situation.
Yeah. And to Colleen and Kate's credit, again, not to embarrass them, but I was at Windsor the other morning, and all the seniors are doing their capstone. That's the first period of the day is capstone, and they were in that auditorium. They were all physically distanced. The auditorium, there were probably, I don't know, what would you say, Colleen, 40 kids in there, maybe 35, 40 kids, physically distanced. They all had their masks on. These kids are 17 and 18 years old and just so cooperative and so respectful of each other. It was again very heartwarming to see that. I told that story of all summer waking up in the middle of the night tackling that junior or senior who wouldn't put their mask on, but it just hasn't happened. So hats off and masks on to all the kids. They've done a great job.
Great, thank you for the update. Does anyone else have any questions or comments, concerns? Hearing none, seeing none. I think I see everyone. I will move on. So we will go to our first policy, that's social media. And from what I could tell, looking at what we have here, is a combination of what we had from Weathersfield as well as the policy from VSBA. Is that correct?
Yeah, no, not really, but
No.
I just let me look at my email here. Lori had emailed me and said I'm resharing it, and she didn't reshare the most recent copy of the SU 52 social media. So I just included the link in the special board meeting email so that you could take a look at it. Basically, what we've done so far is take the Weathersfield and address some of the. I'm sorry. Could everyone hear me?
Now we got you.
Okay. Take the Weathersfield policy and shape it to take care of many of the concerns that were voiced in the last meeting. Putting in a stipulator that allows family members, taking out the age limit and just putting in students who are enrolled. But there is one section and highlighted in yellow, personal social media E, part 2C, which is not required because that's covered in the required VSBIT policy. And I have a little more work that I want to do with my cohorts on at the very bottom of this document. You'll see notes, and I would like to replace that paragraph in yellow with a section that really talks about Windsor Southeast Supervisory Union employees, not just district employees, but all employees, what their responsibility is on private, you know, a code of conduct possibly for private social media accounts. So that's really the last part I'd like to work on. Under notes, what I did is I just copied some different pieces I found online and pasted them in there, and I'd like to shape that into something a little more to fit our district. I think it's important that that the policy included at least something about expectations of what it means to be a school employee and how that applies to how you present yourself in public. So it's not so much a meshing as much as I think the VSBIT policy is good to go. That really focuses on communication between staff and students and the appropriateness of it. And the social media policy focuses more on the difference between public, school-based social media accounts and how that procedure is for teachers to have them, and guidelines with social media between students and staff, and it just touches very lightly about expectations of school employees' social media, and that's what I want to finish.
So, Bill, you've integrated that VSBIT policy into this one, but
no,
okay.
they're separate policies, and I with more time, I might be able to do that, but really, they're I think it would be hard to do, just because the VSBIT policy really is about communication, online communication between staff and students, and that's quite a wide area, because it comes down to email, it comes down to social media, it comes down to all those things. Very legal expectation, and I don't think that I feel comfortable combining the two and getting everything. If this board would like me to do it, I would need more time than I've had in my life in the past couple of weeks.
Right.
Yeah. So Amy here, I think you're right, Bill, that it would be better to have them two separate policies, to have the VSBIT with the legal requirements, all of that covered.
The problem is I agree with that, Amy.
What is
Go ahead.
sad, for want of a better term, that policy, I'm looking for it here with our meeting, and it was not included.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I think at the last meeting, and I don't know because we didn't have all the detailed notes, but I thought there was some thought that we might be incorporating that VSBIT policy into the social media policy. And if we're not going to do that, then I think we have to reshare that VSBIT policy and get that into our format. I don't think we ever did that, did we?
It was started.
Yeah, it was started. So I think
what I thought happened at the last meeting was wasn't someone supposed to take the VSBA policy and compare it to the Weathersfield one and sort of like take out anything in the Weathersfield one that was already covered, and then we were gonna buy the VSBA because we were gonna like approve that one and then have the Weathersfield thing sort of be like whatever extra we wanted to say.
Yes, and that's what I've done. Well, that's what we've done. And so I plan on taking out the highlighted yellow part because that is the real redundant part. And there was a couple things I changed and we cleaned up based upon concerns about family members and social media and things like that. So we fixed that. But the last part that about there's a portion I would like to add to it.
Yeah.
Before we approve it, but I didn't have time to go over the Vismet one and make sure it was all clean. I just read through it to make sure what was in it, and there was nothing in the Vismet one that I felt we should take out. But there was something in the Weathersfield one that was redundant that I will take out.
I remember it the way Anne Marie Redmond remembered it. We were looking to come up with language that honored both of those documents with the, except that we had to remember it, and I'm not an expert on this, but people at VSBA said that we're not allowed to toy with electronic communications policy at all. So, or we would at least have to submit any changes to them to see if it would.
Right. Yeah, Scott, and that's why I didn't make any changes to it. I mean, I would feel more comfortable reading through it again to make sure all the Windsor Southeast supervisory unions and all the nouns and pronouns were correct. Other than that, I would just leave it as is. The only changes that I've made and plan to make are in the that Weathersfield policy about social media, because they are two separate policies. But you're absolutely right. I am not planning, and I don't think we should make any major changes or any changes to the Vismet policy. It's a decent, very short, to the point policy. When I talk about cleaning up, I'm just making sure that it is in the language of Windsor Southeast Supervisory Union.
Yeah. So I think what's important, Amy, now, and Bill, is that, because remember, Jennifer Tessier and Diane Tessier were the keepers of the policy, at least internally. They had the Word documents that were associated with those. Now that's going to be Lori, right? So we need to just make sure. I mean, she's got the three we're looking at right now: the social media, the modes of instruction for COVID-19, and the anti-racism that was sent out. But I don't know that she has had access to that via. It's a VSBA policy, right, on electronic communication?
Correct.
So if we could just send that to her again, or Bill, once you clean it up, if you could get that to her again. If you said there's a little bit you wanted to do to it, but it doesn't need much, right?
Right. I want to do another read through just
Okay.
to make sure it's
Okay.
matching.
Yeah, I just want to reinforce that I don't understand the cleaning up part. So
Well, Scott, what I mean by cleaning up is that
it's all white.
where it says Windsor South, this policy of Windsor Southeast Supervisory Union, that where we input our name, where it identifies this policy as a Windsor Southeast Supervisory policy, all that is appropriate. That's all.
Yeah, because Scott, the model policy on the VSBA website, it just says the blank will have this. And so what Bill is doing is making sure that Windsor Southeast Supervisory Union is put in there instead of blank.
Yeah, I understand. I think we have lots of examples of that in our policy book already. It doesn't sound like it.
No, we can make that happen easily.
To argue about, we just do it the way we have all the.
Yeah.
So he just wants to make sure that Windsor Southeast Supervisory Union is there instead of blanks.
Yeah.
That's
and
all.
That's easy. And Lori can do that too, quite frankly. I mean, we just need to either get her to that VSBA website or send her that version, the Word version of that. She can do that. And then I don't see, if that's all we're changing and we've agreed that we can't change anything else, then I don't see any reason why you can't adopt that policy tonight, to be honest with you.
Do people feel comfortable with that? It didn't come through tonight, but we have all seen it. And we know, as Scott said, The
Nothing
only thing
changing.
that we can change is adding our supervisory union name to it.
Well, it's unfortunate that it wasn't in the packet, but we did talk about it 2 weeks ago. But
Yeah. I think that was just to, you know, not to, you know, I think that was the Jennifer Tessier, Diane Tessier to Lori. It didn't, you know, that didn't happen. So
We are having our regular meeting in 2 weeks, so we
yeah,
can
so we could wait.
2 weeks. Or if people are feeling comfortable, I could take a motion to approve that.
Yeah, I see no reason why we can't wait 2 weeks and share it out and give people a chance to read through it and then pass it in 2 weeks.
Okay.
That's fine.
Yeah, and you know, hopefully, maybe I'll forward my other policy to Elizabeth, and she can help me pound out that last paragraph along with everyone else has been helping me, so that that's ready to pass as well in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
That would be great. Yeah. So we will have electronic media. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, electronic media. I think it's electronic communication.
And then social media. We'll have those two policies.
So just remember, any policy now that we want to go out with the board packet, it's Lori Brown that's going to, you know, so we just need to make sure she's emailed and then we can make sure it gets out to the board.
Okay. Scott.
yeah, thank you. So I'm not sure if we're going to have a chance, so tell me to stop in a second, but there's some comments I wanted to make about policies in general. I mean, so if you want to go on, just tell me what to do.
Well, the only one left was the modes of instruction, the COVID-19 plan. And with that one, I don't know if it went out in the copy that went to everybody, but we made the changes there that needed to get made. We took Hartford was still in there. No, that was the anti-racism, sorry. But this was the one that we had to put, change the dates on it. And then, yeah, I think that was about it. I mean, it was all, that one was pretty, because remember, that one came directly from,
Yeah, so there's only one part that needs to be determined on that, and that is on page 2, responsibilities of the superintendent.
correct.
Shall provide a monthly or quarterly status report to the board. At our last meeting, I remember that we were hoping to have a monthly status report.
Yeah, it might not have gone into the copy you all got, but that's what we've got in there now. It says,
Okay.
the superintendent shall provide a monthly status report to the board.
Okay.
On sort of the COVID conditions.
So maybe the best way for me to express what I'm trying to say is for us to look ahead to the next regular meeting. That would be the fairest way to do it. And so all I wanted to say was that in looking at the VSBA's list of their model policy manual, there actually are a whole bunch of, to the far left, if you're there on that site, under the required heading, a whole bunch of new dates in late 19 and early 2020 and summer 2020 policy language. I'm not sure if it's just language changes or wholly new policies, and they're under the School Boards Association required heading. And so it's been, just about a year or more since we adopted kind of the whole book, right, Nikki? The whole book.
Yeah, I think it was last summer.
Yeah, so that was kind of the last big look at it. And it looks like perhaps there's a number of additional policies that are required and perhaps not too hard to adopt because they're, again, like the electronic communications one, they are what they are. So
and that's something too I think Lori could do. I think Diane helped with that the last time. She can cross-check, she can crosswalk what we now have out of the required column, and if there's anything we don't have, we can get that updated and get that to the board.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. So in terms of the mode of instruction during COVID.
Yeah, that would be, I think that was the only change.
I'm sorry, David, what?
I think that was the only change that
Okay.
was monthly.
I would take a motion to approve that policy.
I'll make that motion, Nikki.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay. I will, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion on mode of instruction?
I thought we voted on this before.
Well, we wanted to make that one change. To monthly.
So, the change has been made. So all those in favor of approving modes of instruction, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Hey,
Okay. One nay. It has been approved, so that's good to go. Thank you. So those are the three policies. Then we have executive session.
Yeah.
I will take a motion to go into executive session. Oh, Nicole, you had a
One
question.
thing on policies. David, I went to the policy section of the Heartland website.
Okay.
And it's the old policies.
Okay.
So, and I suspect that's the case. And I didn't mention it the last month because I knew that Larry was flat out, and I imagine Larry is still flat out. So I'm not asking for urgency, but we should get it right.
Yeah. And what should, just to be clear, what should be happening is when you go to the policies of the Heartland School Board, it should point you back to the SU policies, correct?
That'd be great.
Yeah.
I don't care how they get there, but
Or they can copy those same policies.
Yeah.
We're all using the same policies, right? Okay.
Yeah. So I think Elizabeth brought that to my attention a month ago or something. And Elizabeth, weren't you in contact with Larry or something about that, or Ryan?
I was, but as Nikki said, they were pretty swamped at the time. So, oh, telephone. I can resubmit a request.
I'll take care. I've got it. I'm doing it right now.
Okay, thank you, David.
Thank you.
Yeah, because at one point they were all, it was all a new ones, and then something happened.
I submitted the request, and I think Larry said that it was a temporary glitch, and then it wound up not being a temporary glitch. That's what it was.
Yeah, slightly more permanent or longer lasting temporary glitch.
Okay.
Thank you, David. So before we go into executive session, it just occurred to me, we need to discuss our next agenda. And that meeting is the 4th Oh, God. Calendar upside down. So that will be on the 28th. And having an update from the Anti-Discrimination Task Force would be good. Anti-racism, excuse me. If something was wrong there.
Right.
Are there, and then the two policies, the electronic communication and social media.
Correct.
And an update on the other policies, that just to see what
Right.
it is that we might be missing.
Yeah, we'll try to get that crosswalk done. So yeah, we'll get those policies on.
Okay. Was there other? You see something in chat. Let me take a look.
Yeah, I think that was Chris. That's Yom Kippur. That.
Oh.
Yeah, don't have a meeting then.
Yeah, we probably shouldn't.
Is there another date that would work better?
How about Chris? Any other day that week? Any other night that week, or what?
I think the rest of the week would be fine. Would
So
not be.
We could move that to Tuesday.
Yeah, for me, it would definitely, that would be fine.
Do you want to do that, everybody?
I'd be late, but it's okay.
What day?
Either Tuesday or Wednesday. Which one's better?
The 29th or the 30th?
30th.
For Nancy, it's the 30th. Anybody can't make the 30th? That's Wednesday.
Yeah, actually, the 30th would work for me. The 29th won't. I have a presentation to make.
Sounds like we're on the 30th then. I'll make that change and it's going to come out to you right now, so you'll all see it.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
And there will probably be other things that come up between, it's 2 weeks. So with that, I will take a motion to go into executive session. It's 8:30.
So moved.
Second.
Okay,
Oh.
and it is for the purpose of personnel
And litigation.
and litigation. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Abstentions? Okay,
Aye.
thank you. I am going to stop the recording
Sounds good.
if I can
Yeah, I
figure
think
out how to do this. Okay, hold on.
I think I can do it too, Amy.